Hi, I'm Bob Schmidt with Home Remodel Workshop. This is part 2 of a 3-part series we're doing on installing crown molding. Let's get to work. The crown molding that we're working with today is a 3 1/4 inch crown mold. We've already made our patterns a few days ago. We have our material acclimated. It's time to get up here and get these ceilings marked. What you do is you take your inside corner pattern, you put it up into the corner, making sure that it's snug into the corner, and you want this bottom piece to be tight against the wall. Up here at the top, you don't have to concern yourself so much with it because usually just the front piece is the longest. Then with holding it against the wall, you come over and you lightly mark the wall, both directions, and you lightly mark the ceiling, both directions. And here you can see the marks I just made. You know, I have the bottom marked here and I have the top marked here. Now when we start to hang our crown mold and fit them together, we're going to stay true to these marks, because if we don't stay true to these marks and we get this crown tilting one way or another, there's no way these miters are going to look right. You're also going to use your inside corner mold to mark the long straight sections of your wall. You're going to mark about every 6 or 8 feet. This is going to give you some idea that you're laying properly to how it's going to hit the wall. Make sure you're flat against the wall again, and then just simply put a small mark, 1/2 inch, top and bottom, just straight across from each other. And that'll also be your guide for when you're putting your crown mold up. A good question to ask is, why not just mark the 2 corners, snap some lines down, and use that as your guide? Well, in a perfect world, where houses are built perfectly level, there's no swales up and down in the ceiling, that's great. This house was built in 1958. It was built before I was born. It's done some moving and some shaking over the years. And basically when you put crown mold up, you follow what's there unless you plan on tearing down the house and rebuilding. You're going to do the same thing with the pattern you made for an outside corner. You simply bring it up to the corner, make sure you get it nice and stugged in, hold it up tight, and mark the bottom on both sides, and mark the top on both sides. And you're going to use this mark for setting your crown just like you do with the ones on the walls in the corners. Another big use for this outside template where you're going to have to make a miter cut is, now don't get me wrong, when I put this up here, this is fitting nice and tight. It's hitting the wall good on both sides. I know that this is going to be a true 45 degrees, and I mark it right there, 45 degrees. Now, if I put this up here and it did a tilt back and forth like this, or I put it up and it wouldn't let this go tight right here, where as I'm pushing it, it wants to spread it, I know that this isn't a 45 degree, in which case I'd put a big question mark here, and what I would do is I would make another small template and I would play with the miters until I got a true cut that stayed on my line. You don't want to be playing with the miters once you're done using your full pieces of wood, because that can get you into trouble. The second use you're going to have for these patterns is you're going to mark them up and material. This is our inside corner pattern, this is our outside corner pattern. You're going to notice that we got the arrows facing toward the bottom of the piece of crown mold on both the up and the down, and the material is always aiming away from the miter and away from the corner. I'll show you exactly why you're going to mark these this way. The first piece you're going to install is going to go square from corner to corner. It's going to butt right against the wall. Now what we want is we want a miter cut that's going to come down this side that's going to cope over top of that. To help you get that miter cut and make sure it's proper, we know that this inside corner on this side is the piece that we're going to want to cut. You're going to take this piece with you to the miter box, and I'll show you what you got to do. And if you physically carry this pattern out with you to your sawhorse, doesn't matter whether it's 3 floors down, 2 floors up, wherever you're cutting, and you bring it out and you know that this is the cut you want. You had your hand on it, you know where it is. Now when you get it out to your saw, what you do is you take a look at the up and material. You always orient the up, you guessed it, up. And then you see the material. So that tells you that you want this angle cut on this board to show the profile for coping. Now what you do is you physically set your saw to that cut, and you know that this is the angle cut you need on this piece and with your material going that direction to get this cut. I hate to admit it, but even those of us who call ourselves professionals, on occasion, we go out to that saw, we think we have it in our brain the way everything's supposed to be oriented, and on occasion I still come in with the miter cut on the wrong end of the board. So this may seem like a silly thing to do, but it's definitely well worth your effort. And you're going to do exactly the same thing with your outside corner pattern. You're going to carry this out to your sawhorse with you, flip it upside down, and you know that that's the miter cut you want, and the material is going this direction. You're going to notice I got all these little pieces of tape. Well, all these little pieces of tape, what this is a brick and backup block house. And what that means is they have cinder block on the outside, or brick on the outside, a little bit of airspace, cinder block on the inside, and then furring strips. So what I'm looking for is furring strips through plaster in a 1958 house. It's not really easy to do. However, this nifty little magnet here that I got, which I also made a video of, by the way, will actually, if you watch it, when it gets over top of that, see how the string kind of tilts left, tilts right? That tells me that there's something there. I've checked it in several different locations to make sure that that's exactly what's going on. There, and then what I did was I put a straight edge through these multiple marks, and I put me a mark on the ceiling. The mark on the ceiling I have is above where my crown's going to go. I don't want to have all these nasty little marks all over my ceiling after I put my crown up. I know that this is a good anchoring point. Now if you see these magnets I have up here on the ceiling, they also find nails that are in the plaster. It's kind of a little sticklish. You got to be real gentle with moving this around to find nails through plaster. It's a little bit more difficult. With drywall, it pops onto them. With plaster, you just got to kind of play with it. Then conversely, after I get multiple spots, I put a mark on the ceiling. So I know I have a ceiling rafter here, and I know I have a wall coming up here. That's going to give me my nailing point for my wall and my nailing point for my ceiling. Now, that being said, electricians, especially on a furring situation, when they run their wires up, they're going to run it between the furring, which means that that wire is only 5/8 of an inch behind the plaster. Electricians do not run wires through furring strips. They're going to go the easiest place possible, so it'll probably be between this ceiling rafter and here. It'll probably come up through here somewhere. I consider this a safe area to nail. Anywhere from here to here is not a safe area to nail. If there's a wire going up through there, I don't want to hit that wire. You know it, I know it, everybody else knows it. Electrician comes into a job after a job is this old and they want to fish a wire up, they're going to use their fish tape and drag that wire up. Sometimes it's going to be right behind the surface, or if there's a furring strip here, they'll actually notch that out, tack their wire below the surface of the plaster, and a plaster will come in, or drywaller, and we'll finish over top of that. I always run my voltage tester around these walls to see if there's any way, and even on the ceiling, to see if there's any way an electrician has a wire buried right in there. I turn on all the lights and switches in the house so that I know that there would be current running through them. And if all of a sudden this thing starts to bleep red, I know that that's a danger area where I will not nail. Although I didn't find any hot electrical wires around my ceiling, I did want to show you how this does work. If you move this thing back and forth around this electric switch with the switch being on and the light, you see down below there's nothing going on. But when you get over here, there must be an electrical feed coming out the side that's real close to the surface. And then over here, there must be electric wires running right up a stud here next to this box. That's pretty close to the surface. If it's close enough to set this meter off, it's close enough for me to put a nail into. So that's what it would look like if you were using this around your ceiling and you found a wire that was buried just below the surface. The question is, what do you do if you found your wall studs, you have those marked, but you have nothing in the ceiling that you're going to be able to nail to? What you can do is simply take a 2x4, rip it down to an angle that fits loosely, it doesn't have to be tight, loosely behind this crown mold. If you have a table saw and you can rip these on, that's great. If not, you can use a power saw, and then either screw or nail these into all your stud locations. And then when you go to shoot your crown on, you can shoot at this point here and at this point here and shoot right into that block, and that'll hold your crown snugly against the ceiling. All right, we're at the end of video 2 of the series, and you've already done a lot of work. You've selected your material, you've prepped your area for studs, you've checked for electrical hazards, you've made and installed your little blocks for nailing up. Now in phase 3, we're going to move on to how to go ahead and approach your room to get this stuff going. I'm Bob Schmidt with Home Remodel Workshop. See you on the next one.